Hey guys, it's week 230 and this week we are talking about hand fasting. So, as a weird historian loving individual and as someone who is a hand fasting officiant as well as a wedding officiant, I want to talk a little bit about the history of hand fasting. I know that Tara touched base on it on Monday about what it is. So, hand fasting goes all the way back to the Middle Ages. Now, it's generally said that it is ancient Celtic. I don't know that I would consider it ancient Celtic per se, but it is fairly common from the 12th century to the 17th century in Ireland, England, and Scotland. So, hand fasting was not actually considered a marriage, it was considered a betrothal, and it varied a little bit from country to country. And a lot of the reason why people say that it is a year-and-a-day marriage, or it can be a year-and-a-day marriage, is that traditionally, in the older centuries, you would be hand-fasted at one annual event, say like a spring celebration or a harvest festival, and then the next year you would actually be married. And through the hand fasting, the vows went as such. I, insert your name, hereby take, insert their name, to my, and then there's, depending on the family situation, and therefore plight thee my troth. And thus it came through to mean betrothal. Now, usually there would be an exchange of a gift, a ring, a coin, a scarf, and in Scotland there would be a tying of ribbon or twine or sometimes tartan. So tying that into a knot is where the phrase came, to tie the knot. It was primarily used in the 13th century to describe the bond of marriage. This is referenced in the legend of St. Catherine from 1225. Now, hand fasting was widespread again from the Middle Ages and through the 17th century, and the hand fasting was considered a traditional step. However, in 1754 in England, they started passing laws to stop clandestine marriages. And then in 1939, there was a similar law passed in Scotland. So it's kind of come around full circle, and now a lot of neo-pagans and pagans and heathens are using hand fastings. Each hand fasting is different. Like I said, as someone who performs hand fastings, the couples vary, and therefore the hand fastings vary. Some people want to write their own vows. Some people want to use old vows or traditional vows. Some people want to use ribbon. Some people want to do their hands differently. It's just like modern day weddings as far as like the normal sense goes, that each wedding is tailored in modern times to the couples that come around. I consider myself to be married 3 times. My first wedding was by a judge or a justice of the peace. My second wedding was a hand fasting, and my third wedding was both a non-traditional wedding and a hand fasting. It was a little bit of both. But yeah. So in historical times, a hand fasting would be considered betrothal. Now, in rural areas, there are ways to have that made. It was basically the version of common law for rural areas. If there wasn't a church or the pastor or the minister wasn't available, so on and so forth, then it would be considered a marriage. But as a general rule, it was a betrothal. As someone who has done hand fastings for her own ceremony and as someone who officiates them for someone else, I tend to find that each couple that draws in a hand fasting or even a traditional wedding ceremony, that it is about that couple and it's a reflection of things that are sacred to that couple and something that means something to them. And I think it's important for us to remember that if people choose to use a hand fasting as their marriage ceremony, even if there's not legal paperwork per se, that it still should be considered holy to the rest of our community. So there you go. There's a little bit on hand fasting, and I will see you guys next week when we discuss the next topic here on Starting Out Solitary.